Today we're going to talk about Halloween 2018, and I'm sure you'll
Hmm.
talk about kind of the older films, which I didn't go back to see, and we'll get into that. All right, so Halloween 2018. It's supposed to be a follow up to the first film, right? Not the first and second.
Yes.
Okay, can you explain to me, as somebody who hasn't seen the first and second film for quite some time, why they skipped the second one? Since, from what you told me, the first two films are supposed to be just one movie.
Yeah. To my understanding, what I read was that Jamie Lee Curtis only wanted to go back to it if they pretty much clean slated the series, with the exception of the first movie. And so maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe I'm going to assume this one. Maybe it was kind of like David Gordon Green's and Danny McBride's decision to kind of pick the movie from that standpoint. But if anything, it's kind of like just keeps with the same motif of other franchises where it's just they're doing a lot of retcons,
Right.
and this one's no exception.
But since they were the first two were supposed to be like one long movie, I find it curious if
Yes.
they would ditch the second one.
I mean, I do as well. Considering that the second one is where you really find out that she is Mike Myers' sister, Laurie Strode's like Mike Myers' sister, and that's still obviously that's the one of the key plot points here is that he's still going after her because of their bloodline.
Is that mentioned in the 2018 one? Because now that I think back, I don't know if they ever specifically said that she was the sister.
Mm. I mean, that's usually is the link that actually no, they did mention it. Remember that the doctor said that that's the connection between Michael Myers and Laurie. That's the reason he went all like bonkers and stuff. Is that that's kind of like they have that interconnecting bloodline.
Okay.
So I mean, it makes sense that he's going after this girl, and that's the only justification for it. Because if now it would just be some random chick he wanted to kill 40 years ago for no
Well,
apparent reason.
that's actually a good segue to. So, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm not a huge fan of the Halloween franchise. I watched the first like four about 12 years ago, and
Hmm.
I just realized I don't know, Mike Myers is not compelling. I just don't care. And while watching this movie, one of the things that bothers me is that he's so random in the way that he chooses who he kills. Like, yeah, he
Hmm.
has the one target, right? But kind of, he'll bump into people. Like, he'll be in a crowd and he won't kill anybody. He'll walk into a house and he won't kill the person in the house, but he'll walk into another house and he'll kill that person. Not because they saw him or anything like that. It seems so random that I don't know. I don't care. It doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, there's something incongruent about the way he goes about killing. Like in comparison to Jason, who like Jason, if as long as there's somebody in his way, he's gonna go ahead and doesn't matter if there's like a plenty of people or just one person, he's gonna go and kill him.
Especially if they're
And with
young and
Michael
horny.
Myers, exactly. And Michael Myers kind of like it's kind of bizarre how he actually picks and chooses who kills or doesn't kill. Um, but going back to this movie, I think that there were good things about it. It's masterfully not masterfully crafted, but it's well crafted. Um, David Gordon Green really made sure that they replicated the tone of the original film. It has a lot of the same color palettes, a lot of the similar photography. It's very artistically done. I also like the editing. I think the movie's paced together well. um, I think the biggest folly for this film is that there's a lot of issues with the script. And look,
Yeah.
this is giving it credit. I mean, understanding that in these slasher movies, there's a lot of things you have to kind of like get away with or kind of like manipulate to these things to become plausible. But in this movie, I think besides what we're talking, some of the turns are weird, especially with the new doctor that I guess maybe the twist was supposed to be he was supposed to be the new Loomis, and all of a sudden it's like no, he's actually has evil intentions with Michael Myers and whatnot. So maybe that's how he ends up kind of like giving a turn. Uh, but it's just there's a lot of things that don't really flow very well. Like it starts off like a Laurie Strode movie, and like her concern with her family and this monster coming in, and then for like 40 minutes she's not really an integral part of the story, and
Yeah.
it sort of becomes like a Richard Linklater type slacker movie where you get vignettes of these teenagers and their wake, and they're during a Halloween evening, and then obviously all broken up by Michael Myers slashing them or gutting them to death.
Yeah, one of the things that I found kind of interesting, it's just a small detail, but it did kind of stick out to me. You're going to tell me that in this town where Mike Myers is this famous killer, not one person dresses like Mike Myers for Halloween?
Well, and the funny thing, like even in the sequels, like if I'm not mistaken, like in Halloween 5, you had a couple of cops confuse a kid that was walking around with Michael Myers costume.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense, of course. Another thing I noticed about this movie, going back to tone, is even though I appreciate the artistry of trying to like recapture John Carpenter's tone, I found that besides the occasional cell phone that shows up at random, this movie still feels like a time capsule. Like there's nothing about this movie that indicates that we're in 2018. Like the houses look the same. Like even the way people dress, like they look like something that got pulled out of the 70s. To be honest, it almost kind of, for one of my criticisms of H2O, which was the first retcon they did with Jamie Lee Curtis coming back or whatnot, at least for my issues with that movie, at least it kind of felt like a movie that belonged in the 90s, where it's kind of like 20 years have passed. You know what I mean? And this one, it kind of feels like Haddon feels like this timeless, town in Illinois. It's kind of
if you take out the cell phones, there's really nothing that ties it to any particular era.
Exactly, you know what I mean? And it pertains to 1978. You know what I mean? So I thought that was kind of peculiar, to say the least. Now, another thing that I found intriguing was that if you're gonna cut to just the one movie, and from 2 all the way to the Curse of Michael Myers, or Resurrection, all those things are cut out of this storyline. Maybe it's a little bit of a stretch to make Laurie Strode into like Sarah Connor. I kind of like, when more I found about it, I was like, I know she went through something, very disturbing 40 years ago, but this idea that she was preparing for the apocalypse was kind of like, it felt a little out of character for what Laurie Strode is. I prefer, once again, what H2O did was like, yeah, she's aware that it's something that can come back to haunt her, but I like the fact that she also found a way to move on with her life. You know what I mean? I think that feels a little bit more realistic to me, a little bit more grounded than just becoming, the new Sarah Connor.
Well, and that actually speaks to another part of that, where it's like, okay, she obviously did try to move on because she had a daughter, and she has a granddaughter in this film, and so at some point she did try to move on, but then so we don't exactly know when this obsession of, because she says it at some point where it's like she wasn't preparing for him to maybe come back. Every day she prayed he would come back. And that just seemed so kind of like, where's that coming from? I mean, at some point she did try to start her own life. And then all of a sudden something flipped, and she's been praying for this guy to come back so that she could try to kill him like this whole time. That
felt a little odd.
Yeah, it was really odd. It was really out of place. Like, see, now if you add the history of the films that they cut out, then it kind of makes sense, because it's like, fuck, every 10 years this asshole's getting out of jail and trying to kill me. At this point, just get him out so I could kill him, So, I found that really weird. Since I haven't said it, what I texted John after I saw it was, it's a good, 70s slasher film. However, if I'm going to go see a slasher film, I want some kind of gore. And there was really only one scene that qualified as gore. And that's the kind of, that really turns me off to a slasher movie, because what's the whole point? I mean, I don't really care. Okay, he's stabbing somebody behind a wall. He's stabbing somebody in a shed off camera. I don't... even the scene because you had asked me, is there a POV shot? And there's that one POV shot where he's like it's a flashback where he's
Yeah,
stabbing.
I think they used the original footage from the first Halloween movie.
Oh, really? So he
If I'm
looked
not
away in
mistaken.
the original.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, as far as I know, psycho killers when they're stabbing their victims, they're not looking over their right shoulder to the wall behind them.
Well, in fairness to this film, I think Halloween, especially if we go to the first one, wasn't necessarily the most graphic movie. You know
No,
what
it
I
wasn't.
mean? Like it was more about saying suspense and setting up, you know, where this guy might be, where this guy might end up getting you, more so than just showing you like, you know,
Well,
the actual victim getting slashed
right.
or mauled.
Which is probably what turned me off originally.
Yeah, and personally, I think this movie actually depicts Michael Myers very well. He is definitely brutish, and
Yeah.
you know he's brutal, and I kind of really like that about the way they went about it in this new movie. It's it's gory enough within what the Halloween franchise set up that I was okay. I was fine with the violence. You know what I mean? Could have been a little bit more graphic, maybe, but I think that it went well with kind of how that franchise always sets up, especially the early entries.
Yeah, and again, that probably goes to what I was saying before, which is one of the reasons why I probably just don't. It doesn't call my attention. Yeah, it's a slasher film, but it's a slasher film with no gore, and that to me really doesn't do anything for me. So you mentioned that the original was more about suspense. How do you feel that this did in regards to building suspense? Because I really, I don't. Besides maybe like one or two scenes, I really didn't feel a sense of dread or suspense or like, oh my god, where's he going to come from? It was more like just waiting for it to happen.
Well, maybe it's just years of watching these type of movies where you kind of like become a little bit I guess nothing really shocks you all that much.
I'll disagree. I'll disagree. I won't say. Well, I don't think I cannot be shocked anymore. But when a scene is well done and it's made to build some kind of suspense or make you like really look at the screen and go like, oh shit, what the hell's going on? It still works for me if it's well done. Like the example I could give was a few days ago. I told you I watched that Channel Zero Dream Door. And the eerie parts of that, I was like, ooh, what the hell is this? So it still can have an effect. It's just, I don't feel this movie did anything that really stood out in that regard.
I would say this. I think that everything is pretty well orchestrated, yet I didn't necessarily feel that kind of like, personally for me, they kind of like made me get on the edge of my seat and really get like, oh, like this is where it's coming. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everything kind of felt, everything was well executed, but very predictable for the most part.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Is I didn't really think there was no real moment that I could think of that I was like, oh crap, here it comes. It was just like, all right, well, it's coming eventually. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. And what do you think about like the whole? Because I think one of the things I have with the movie is that it kind of feels like it's like there's like two movies in one, and to a certain degree. Yeah, it's an homage to the original Halloween movie, but then it does have a little bit of that sort of like I said, it almost has a Richard Linklater tone to it, where it's like, okay, now you're following these teenagers or these, all these like little vignettes of what happens on a Halloween night, and all these, and then Michael Myers shows up in every one of these moments and ends it, and then it goes to another vignette. How do you feel about that? Because it kind of felt like it lost a little bit of, by going that direction, kind of lost a little bit of the emotional purpose of it, which was kind of like setting up the whole Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers thing. You know what I mean? Because at times, honestly, I felt that after a while, Laurie Strode is almost like, where is she even coming to play in this movie?
Well, she's kind of like the whole middle of the film, she's like an afterthought.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that's a little bit weird, because it's like you are setting up this movie because that's the reason to like bring it back. It's like there is a resolution that needs to be found between both of them. These both enemies, right? And it kind of feels like a lot of what Ice felt to me was that they're trying to capture a little bit of the trauma of what Laurie has gone through, and also to a
Very
degree what Michael
ineffective.
Myers has gone through, and very ineffectively. But that seemed to have been the setup.
Yeah,
That's
it
when you brought
definitely
the whole
was
thing with the
implied.
daughter. You know, it was definitely implied it was going to take a little bit more of that of that direction, and then it kind of didn't or didn't execute it properly.
I think maybe he was too focused on writing like a slasher film, and he didn't invest time because he didn't really develop any characters. And the script has some stupid shit in it. And so to get to what you asked me before about how did I feel about the slacker kids, the slacker kid didn't bother me because it's a more contemporary way of showing like the over sexualized stoner 70s kind of teen. It's just a more contemporary way of showing those, I guess, which didn't really bother me. I do think there was a severe lack of character development, but also talking about one of the stupidest things in the script, I felt that it was so moronic the way that damn script starts. So, yeah, for those who haven't seen it, obviously spoilers. I've already put it in the title. That's why I was looking away.
You want this?
Yeah.
You want this?
Oh my god,
that was
dude.
odd.
Dude, okay, first of all, these two podcasters, because now we don't even care about actual news people doing like interviews or research or articles. It's podcasters now. That's every horror movie's going to have a fucking podcaster instead of some news anchor. So these two podcasters go to the psych ward where Mike Myers is being held. And they ask to talk to him. Like, all right, fine, fair enough. If they have a big enough YouTube channel, why not? They let him into the yard where Mike Myers is standing, chained to some piece of stone. And they have their backpacks with them. Like, they're in a psych ward.
Yeah.
And they allow them in with all their backpacks and all their bullshit. And it doesn't even seem like they cleared them. And as this guy's like, oh, Mike Myers, why won't you talk to me? Say something. He fucking pulls out Mike Myers' mask out of his bag. Okay, first of all, how the hell did he get this? Is that not entered into evidence somewhere? So, ignoring that, he holds it up and he's like, oh, you can feel it. You can feel it, can't you? Don't you want this? Don't you? What psychiatrist is gonna let that happen? He's gonna be like, dude, what are you, fucking crazy? Get the hell out of here. But he just lets it play out. And then all the psychopaths in the ward are going nuts. Once I saw that, I was like, this is exactly the point where I think people should stand up and walk out of the theater. Because it's the dumbest shit ever. Like, I understand it's a dumb slasher film, but Jesus. I mean, come on. Where in the hell how poor is this psych ward that they're going to let this shit play out? So I found that so stupid.
Look, I didn't mind it as much as you did, but I will admit that it is pretty implausible that they would let somebody incite deranged serial killer to actually go ahead and pursue those impulses again.
No, the only justification that I could come up with was that doctor is obsessed with Mike Myers and reveals himself as a villain later on. So
yeah, that's why maybe they'll try to justify that. Maybe,
sure, but there's no security that's going to look at the doctor and be like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? None of that. And then the other part that cracked me the hell up was, okay, so Mike Myers is in this psych ward. Apparently he's been in the psych ward the whole 40 years. And when is the day that they have to transport Mike Myers out of this psych ward in a fucking bus? Oh, coincidentally on Halloween. You haven't moved this guy for 40 years. And for some reason, during this 40-year anniversary, after he got shown the mask again, you got to stick him in a bus and move him out of there on fucking Halloween. Like, are you kidding?
Yeah. Definitely, how do you call it? Like some pretty bad judgment.
I would say so.
From the same ones, supposedly.
Yeah, well, maybe they've been hanging around psychopaths for too much. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Psychopaths can at least plan shit.
I don't know. I thought overall the movie was fine. Like, I don't think it was. I am a little bit surprised that it's been so well received in terms of its critical praise. There's plenty of things to call out on it.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's gotten like this sort of like overwhelming positive reviews is a little bit bizarre.
Well, my theory on that is that I think it's scratching a niche that isn't being scratched right now, which is, I mean, how many slasher films are coming out nowadays, and maybe that's something that people would like to see again.
Yeah, but the horror genre has been pretty healthy lately. Like Hereditary, The Babadook.
Yeah, but it's not slasher. It's always ghost stories or witches lately.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, it's a different type of. It's a different genre of horror for sure. But and like I say, it does have some. Maybe that we excuse some of the incongruencies of the screenplay because overall it's a well crafted film. But there's a lot of like things that even for saying the bar low for what a slasher movie is, there we're still kind of like roll my eyes over,
Yeah.
So, I mean, whatever. I would say that, I actually went back and I have spent Halloween with Halloween. Like I seen pretty much all the original films, and it was, to be completely honest, I think that for as cheesy as some of those movies get at times, they did set up a mythology, especially during part 4 with Mike Myers, and then like in part 5 with the whole like idea that there could be some, actually part 6 where there could be this whole idea that he comes from like a druid, this druid cult is the one that brings him back or whatnot. I thought that was kind of neat, and it still kind of follows the whole idea that he's following the Strode bloodline. You know what I mean? So it's almost kind of like every movie could be kind of like him trying to go after a descendant of Laurie or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was pretty neat. And, I understand why you couldn't do that and have Jamie Lee Curtis back. But I don't know. I think that I wonder what, or fans, the diehards from the original series might think about the retcon. To be completely honest, because like I said, I like the movies, but not necessarily like the biggest Halloween fan either. Yeah. But I think for those diehards, I wonder if they think how they feel about this whole retcon. Like I said, maybe it was cool to get Jamie Lee Curtis back, but that had been done before. And I mean, I don't know. Like we'll see how, if they end up making a sequel, how that progresses.
Well,
I would say this much better than the Rob Zombie crap. So
for sure. Yeah, that first one from Rob Zombie was a piece of crap.
See, I think part of the problem with the biggest problem with the Rob Zombie movie, and I think part of the problem with this particular film too, but it's not as problematic, is that at the end of the day, Michael Myers went through some trauma. He killed his sister. He's obviously kind of like mentally conflicted or challenged by those events. But ultimately, what makes Michael Myers cool is the fact that he's a force of nature, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think you really need to get so much into detail. It's like, he's going after this family, and we get it. That's like some bizarre way of him trying to reach out in some way, but it doesn't have to be so dense. It has to be ultimately, look, that guy's a force of nature. Every Halloween comes out and he slashes the same town, and I think that fans are okay with it.
Yeah, I think that's fine. You don't need. I think the first remake of Halloween, the problem it fell into was the same thing as the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, is that they tried to give these villains backstories that kind of try to make them sympathetic. And it's like, dude, I don't want to like Freddy Krueger. He's a fucking weird psychopath. That's it. That's all I need.
All these characters, like Jason, Leatherface, Michael Myers, you name them. Like, ultimately what makes them compelling is the fact they're just forces of evil, and they're ultimately, they don't necessarily need more than that, and the problem is that when you try to like get into making them more, giving them more complexity, or kind of like trying to study some sort of like psychological, ramification of their actions, it's hard to do that. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, it's a teenage slasher movie where people are getting killed while having sex, and let me hide behind, the door.
Right.
or let me go ahead. You know what I mean? Like it kind of like doesn't match well.
Yeah. Yeah, and so okay. Also, so moving on to the ending, and then we'll move on to Venom. Um,
Hmm.
I found the ending to be very anticlimactic, and I kind of found it a little funny that it ends up being like Home Alone with Mike Myers.
Kind of is a little bit. Well, that movie has one thing about this particular movie is that, man, like David Gordon Green and Danny McBride you could tell that these guys are big time, like, and obviously they've mentioned it, like they've watched so many movies stoned because they got influence, and that movie has the influence of like the whole Laurie Strode following him around the house and going to like the upstairs room where others are. That's so Silence of the Lambs when she's going after Buffalo Bill.
Yeah.
Like you said, the influence of her being like essentially it's like Home Alone. You know what I mean? There's so much of Richard Linklater in there. There's a little bit of a stoner comedy humor to it. It's like it's not necessarily that it bothers me. It doesn't. But I found that that's kind of like a mesh of so many films going into this one particular slasher movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think about it when I was watching it, but that Silence of the Lambs comparison is a good one. I just like when she started shutting off all the lights, knowing that he was around. I'm like, what are you doing?
Mm.
You do the opposite. You flood that place with so much light that you either blind him or there's no shadow for him to hide in.
Yeah, but they'll take away the suspense of it.
Because when you're
There's something cool about having a flashlight.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
When you're trying to survive, the first thing I'm thinking is, if somebody was watching this, would it be entertaining? I mean, I know I'm going to get gutted like a fish, but I mean, would it be boring if somebody was watching it?
Yeah, you gotta like when you're pursuing a psycho killer, you gotta make sure that you get your entertainment value. If you're gonna get slashed to death or something, so
Sure.
So
So
there's a lot of incongruencies to the movie, and like most of them you can forgive because not forgive, but you can understand because ultimately it's just a slasher movie. I just kind of think that if it would have been perhaps not saying up the psychological aspect between Laurie and Michael Myers, because it kind of felt like they were going for something a little bit deeper, and then it was like, yeah, nah, not really. So, maybe just make it what it is, man. Just have the guy show up every Halloween and kill people and who made dumb decisions and go about that. I think we will be okay with that.
yeah. Yeah, so final verdict. I mean, it was an okay film. I don't think it deserves the hype that it's getting, but it's cool that the slasher movie made the kind of money it made, coming back.
Yeah.
So,
That's what I will say about the Halloween series is that it has benefited from, and even going back to the original series, like from some really great performances, and some really great actors, like Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously, Donald Pleasence as Dr. Loomis. Later on, Danielle Harris, who was an amazing child actress, and she was in 4 and 5 as Jamie. Like, I would say out of all the slasher movies, it's probably the one where like you'll get the highest pedigree of performances, at least the ones that I've seen. So,
for the leads,
yeah, exactly. And I think this movie does have, like Jamie Lee Curtis did a fine job. You get some pretty good actors in the secondary roles, like Judy Greer or like Will Patton. I forgot the name of the guy who plays Boss in Holland Catch Fire. But he was in it. We were both fans of the show, of that particular show that no one saw. I'm glad that they're getting work and they would actually be in a movie. As a generic dumb husband that gets killed. But
sure,
whatever,
but
pays the bills,
I figured we should use the namesake of the show to end it. What's your final take on the topics we've discussed?
My final take: you can never keep a madman down. For all these petitions that we have about doing something different, people love iconic franchises. They love iconic characters. Halloween's proof that you bring a character that hasn't been around, hasn't done a movie like in 15 years, and you add it with the star actors from that franchise, and look, man, it's crazy how much money that movie's made.
Yeah.
We like all these movies. I mean, we're talking about them, so, and we saw them, so like, who are we to say like don't make them anymore? They're, we're obviously just as fans as, or at least intrigued by them Hollywood's gonna keep making them. That's it.
Well, my final take is sequels sell. So if you give them money, you're going to see as many sequels as they can throw at you. And 2 is the most important one. And this goes out to all the writers in Hollywood. Make friends. Make friends that will actually judge your shit and give you good advice. Please. Please. Anyways, with that, those are my 2 cents there.
All right.
Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Peace.